Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a vital regulatory pulse check on your workspace to uncover a completely hidden threat that might actually be lurking in your body art studio right now. We're looking way past the obvious stuff and focusing on the invisible factors that really dictate how well your clients heal.
Now, we have to start with a kind of surprising question. Think about it. You might be running an absolutely flawless autoclave cycle. You're probably using the absolute highest grade of implant-grade titanium jewelry out there. But what if all that perfect hygiene just isn't enough? The scary reality is, even with those gold standard practices, something completely invisible might be slipping right past your studio's daily inspection checklists. You see, when we think of contamination, our minds immediately go to biological threats, right? Biological contamination is acute. It's that visible, fast-acting infection that usually rears its ugly head within 24 to 48 hours. But chemical cross-contamination, that is a completely different beast. It is a slow burn, completely invisible threat. It doesn't cause immediate panic in your client. Instead, it causes prolonged inflammation, weirdly inconsistent color saturation, and just this vague sense that something isn't healing right.
So here's our regulatory pulse checklist for today's explainer. We're going to cover the invisible compliance gap, the 4 hidden pathways these chemicals travel, what actually happens when inks and lubricants clash, the disinfectant residue paradox, and finally, how to fix this blind spot. This is all designed to give you the exact tools you need to self-audit and elevate your own internal regulations. Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the invisible compliance gap, and uncover what this hidden risk actually is. By definition, chemical cross-contamination is the transfer of completely colorless, odorless chemical residues. And because these chemicals are invisible in your typical studio lighting, they are just incredibly easy to miss. Imagine a little cap of white ink. If it has literally just a few parts per million of isopropyl alcohol residue in it, it looks exactly like a perfectly clean cap. You wouldn't see a difference at all. But that tiny trace chemical means the ink is going to cure differently in the dermis, and it's your client who has to live with that compromised result. All right, let's move on to Section 2 and figure out how this builds into the physical environment of your studio. How do these microscopic chemicals actually get around? Well, the transfer happens through 4 main hidden pathways: glove transfer, surface contact, aerosol contamination, and shared containers. Any single one of these can turn a totally ordinary item, like, say, a shared bottle of green soap just sitting on your counter, into a secondary source of contamination. Let's break down exactly how these pathways operate so you can spot them in your own workflow. Now, what is truly staggering here is just the scale of glove transfer. It is the most frequent pathway, but we are not talking about a visible smear of ointment. We're talking about a microscopic molecular film, typically just 0.1 to 5 micrometers thick. So when a gloved finger adjusts a machine grip after handling a lubricated needle bar, it leaves a micro layer of residue. Then your next glove touches that grip, picks up the residue, and transfers it directly to the client's skin or an ink cap. It's like a microscopic relay race you didn't even know you were running. Then we have aerosol contamination, and this is actually the most common cross-contamination error even highly experienced studios make. When you spray surface disinfectant, it generates a droplet cloud that travels way, way beyond where you actually aimed it. If you've got ink caps left open or pigment bottles uncapped while you spray, boom, those chemical droplets deposit directly onto your pigments and tools. This brings us to Section 3, when inks and lubricants clash. What exactly happens when these rogue chemicals mix with your pigments on a molecular level? Well, it completely depends on the chemistry. If petroleum-based lubricants accidentally mix with water-based inks, they form these tiny micro-droplets. Those droplets essentially act as traps, grabbing onto pigment particles and causing them to clump up together. And that leads to wildly inconsistent color saturation in the skin. On the flip side, silicone oils, which are totally insoluble and glycerin-based carriers, can cause visible streaks. And since the body doesn't actually break silicone down, those microdroplets can persist in the dermis pretty much indefinitely. And hey, even your trusty green soap isn't immune here. Green soap is a surfactant. If trace levels from a wash bottle contact a pigment cap during a rinse, it might not be a total disaster right away, but at higher concentrations, those surfactant properties will actually over-disperse the pigment particles. The end result is a healed tattoo that looks incredibly washed out and lacks saturation. Nobody wants that. Which brings us to a really frustrating irony in our regulatory pulse check. Let's look at Section 4, the disinfectant residue paradox. So the crucial point is this. Disinfectants are absolutely essential to your biological safety protocols. We obviously need them. But the paradox is that the very chemical designed to make a surface safe can quickly become a dangerous contaminant itself if it isn't properly removed after its required contact time.
Think of these protocols as your ultimate compliance cheat sheet. Take quats, or quaternary ammonium compounds. They leave residues that can cause localized irritation in fresh wounds, so they absolutely require a strict rinse with sterile water or IPA after their 2 to 10 minute contact time. Then there's isopropyl alcohol, or IPA, which is great because it evaporates completely, leaving no residue, but if a drop lands in an open ink cap, it denatures the pigment carrier. And bleach? If it's not strictly rinsed, it literally leaves a highly corrosive reactive crystalline salt right there on your station. Yikes.
All right, so we know the risks and we know the pathways. Let's move to Section 5, fixing the regulatory blind spot. How do we actually close this compliance gap without breaking the bank?
The most effective fix is shockingly simple. It's a 3-zone segregation system. Zone 1 is clean storage, Zone 2 is chemical storage, and Zone 3 is your station setup. By implementing this basic structure and using color-coded labeling, you instantly make the invisible threat of cross-contamination visible before it even has a chance to happen.
Now, you combine those physical zones with strict, task-segmented workflow discipline. This means establishing hard boundaries. You need a glove change at every single task boundary, meaning you separate your lubricant handling from your ink setup and client contact. You need individual issue containers with artist labels rather than those communal bottles everyone grabs. You must adopt a studio-wide rule to close all caps before spray cleaning, literally no exceptions. And always dispense session lubricants into single-use portion cups at setup, keeping the big bulk bottle far, far away from the aerosol zone. I really want to highlight this fantastic insight from Patrick's deep archive. He notes that a high-end €60,000 studio build-out can completely fail this chemical audit, while a small home-based studio with simple IKEA shelves can pass with flying colors. Optimal client healing and flawless internal regulation, they come down to disciplined awareness, not the size of your budget. It's all about how you work, not how much you spend. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct challenge to evaluate your own workspace today. The cost of preventing chemical cross-contamination is virtually negligible. We're talking just a few portion cups and some workflow discipline. But the cost of compromised healing, prolonged inflammation, and washed-out pigments, that is massive for your reputation. So take a hard look at your station right now. Is a single, shared bottle of green soap sitting on your counter secretly compromising your otherwise perfect procedure?